She promised to take care of me, but instead she stripped me bare. My trust became her weapon. That betrayal lit a fire in me I never thought I had. My name is Frances, and before I begin, I'd like to know, where are you watching from? Sometimes sharing our stories across distances reminds us we aren't as alone as we feel. I never thought my own daughter would be the source of my heartbreak. For most of my life, she was the person I believed would be my anchor when the world grew heavy. After my husband passed away, I leaned on her in ways I never imagined I'd need to. She was the one who told me, with soft eyes and a steady hand on mine, "Mom will take care of you." At that moment, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe I was safe in her hands. Grief does strange things. It leaves you hollow, fragile, desperate for reassurance. And when someone you love promises to carry you, you cling to that promise like a lifeline. The early days after my husband's death were a fog. I moved slower, ate less, spoke little. I was still reaching for his side of the bed at night, still expecting his voice to call from the garden. My daughter, whom I'll call Anna, stepped in quickly. She began with small kindnesses. Grocery runs, paying the electric bill, driving me to the pharmacy. Each gesture wrapped me in a quilt of comfort I thought I desperately needed. I didn't see then how each helpful act carried threads of control. One afternoon, over a cup of tea at my kitchen table, Anna said, "Mom, you shouldn't have to worry about things like bills or accounts. You've handled it all your life. Let me do it now." Her voice was so calm, so loving, that I felt ashamed for hesitating. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was clinging too tightly to the old rhythms. I gave her the electric bill, then the water, then my bank login, so she could set up automatic payments. It felt like slipping one finger at a time off a ledge I had been holding for decades, the ledge of independence. I told myself it was okay. After all, this was my daughter, the girl I had nursed when she was sick, stayed up late helping with school projects, defended against playground bullies. Surely if anyone had my best interests at heart, it was her. But there were moments, a quick flicker in her tone, a firmness in her grip when she took papers from me, that pricked at the back of my mind. I brushed them aside. I told myself I was imagining things. At my age, you doubt your instincts more than you should. There was one evening I can't forget. I had gone to bed early, restless from a day of memories that wouldn't leave me alone. I got up for water and passed by the living room. Anna was on the phone, speaking in a low but urgent voice. "No, don't worry, she won't notice," she said. "I'll handle it." I froze in the hallway, my hand on the wall for balance. The words seeped into me, heavy and bitter. She noticed me then, and her face changed. The quick smile, the overly cheerful, "Oh, Mom, just talking to a friend." I wanted to believe her. I told myself not to be suspicious. But something lodged in my chest that night, a stone of unease I couldn't swallow. Now, as weeks turned into months, Anna's role grew. She began sorting through drawers, muttering about clutter. She'd hold up my husband's old books and say, "You don't need these anymore, do you?" She said it like she was tidying, but each item carried a piece of me. I tried to laugh it off, to let her guide me. Maybe this was what letting go looked like. Maybe it was what aging gracefully required, releasing the reins, trusting the next generation. But some nights, alone in my quiet house, I felt stripped, not of possessions yet, but of something deeper. My choices, my voice, my place as the woman who had always managed her own life. The first betrayal wasn't when she sold my things or drained my accounts. It was when she convinced me to hand over the keys to my independence, wrapped not in cruelty, but in what looked like love. And I let her. That's the hardest truth to admit, because betrayal rarely arrives with a knife in the dark. It comes softly, with words that sound like protection, gestures that feel like care. It comes through the hands of those you never thought could hurt you. And I was about to learn how deeply those hands could take. They say trust is built over a lifetime, but can be shattered in a single act. In my case, the shattering came slowly, like cracks in a window you don't notice until the glass finally gives way. Tainsapkens. Anna kept telling me, "Mom, you shouldn't have to worry about these things anymore. You've earned rest. Let me handle it." The words were sweet, but they carried weight. I had been managing bills and accounts since my 20s. After my husband's passing, those routines became my anchor. Balancing the checkbook, writing checks for utilities, tucking away savings, mundane tasks, but they reminded me I was still in control of my life. Yet each time she reached across the table, took a paper from my hand, or shook her head gently when I fumbled with an online form, I gave a little more away. It started innocently. The first time, it was the electricity bill. She said, "I'll set it up for autopay, Mom. One less thing for you to think about." The next week, it was the water bill, then the gas. By the third month, she was logging into my bank account from her laptop. "Don't worry, I'll transfer the funds," she said, her fingers tapping quickly, while I sat across from her at the kitchen table. I remember sitting there, clutching my teacup, staring at her hands moving over the keyboard. They were the same hands I used to hold when crossing the street, the same hands that clung to mine on the first day of school. But now they were moving swiftly, decisively, in a way that excluded me. There's a humiliation that comes with letting someone else manage what you've always been capable of. At first, I told myself it was love, that she was simply making life easier. But deep down, I felt like a child again, watched over, corrected, dismissed. One afternoon, when I tried to log into my account, the password didn't work. I called her, confused. "Oh, I changed it, Mom. For security," she said breezily. "You don't need to worry about that stuff anymore." Something inside me twisted. I asked, "Shouldn't I have the password too?" She laughed lightly. "Of course, Mom, but what's the point? I've got it covered." Her tone was so smooth, so patronizing, that I swallowed my protest. I told myself not to be ungrateful. She was, after all, taking time from her busy life to help me. She had her own children, a house, a career. I didn't want to be the burden. That word, burden, haunted me. It sat on my chest every time I thought of asking for my independence back. What if she grew tired of helping me? What if she pulled away completely? So I silenced myself. It wasn't only the bills. Soon she began helping in other ways. She went through my jewelry box one evening, pulling out necklaces and rings I hadn't worn in years. "Why keep these locked away? You never wear them. I could sell them, and we could put the money somewhere useful." I reached for a small gold locket, one my husband gave me on our 10th anniversary. I said, "Not this one." Her face tightened just slightly, then she smiled. "Of course, Mom, just the others." Later, when I opened the box again, the locket was there, but 3 rings were missing. She said she put them in a safe place. I wanted to believe her. I forced myself to believe her. Every time I felt the urge to question her, I thought of how lonely the house felt when she wasn't around. The silence pressed against me, and I convinced myself her presence, her voice, even her control, was better than the void. But something in me was shrinking. Each day I felt less like Frances, the woman who raised 2 children, managed a household, and worked part-time to make ends meet. Instead, I felt like a shadow, a body sitting in a chair while decisions were made around me. There was one night I'll never forget. I was in bed, the lamp still on, rereading old letters from my husband. I heard Anna's voice drift down the hall, speaking to her husband on the phone. "She won't fight me on it," she said. "She doesn't even check anymore." Her words cut through me like ice water. I lay there in the dim light, clutching the letter in my hand, and realized it wasn't love that guided her. It was something else. Greed, perhaps. Control. I didn't have the courage to name it yet, but the trust that had held me like a net was starting to fray. Its trust doesn't break all at once. It erodes, and I was standing on eroded ground, trying desperately not to see the drop beneath me. I thought the worst had already happened, losing my husband, surrendering my routines, depending on someone else. But nothing prepared me for the day I walked into my own home and felt like a stranger. It was a Tuesday morning, quiet as always. I had gone out for a short walk, the kind where you don't go far because the world feels too big and heavy. When I returned, the house felt off. At first I couldn't place it. Then my eyes landed on the bookshelf in the corner of the living room. Half the shelves were bare. The worn leather-bound volumes my husband collected, gone. His pipe stand, gone. Even the little porcelain figurines my mother had given me vanished. I froze in the doorway, my pulse hammering in my ears. "Anna?" I called out, my voice thinner than I intended. She appeared from the kitchen, casual as if nothing were amiss, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Oh, Mom, I thought I'd surprise you." I cleared out some of the clutter. Clutter. That's what she called the fragments of my life. I walked past her, my eyes darting from corner to corner. The jewelry box on my dresser, lighter than before. The chest in the hallway, emptied of quilts my grandmother had sewn. I turned to her, my throat tight. "Where are they?" "Relax, Mom." She raised her palms as if to calm me. "I sold a few things. Nothing you need. We don't have space for all that, and the money will go to better use." Her words struck me harder than any blow. My knees weakened and I gripped the arm of the sofa to steady myself. "You sold them?" My voice trembled. "Without asking me?" She sighed, impatient now. "You don't understand, Mom. I'm doing this for you. You don't need all this junk sitting around. It's better this way." Junk. That was the word she chose for the life I had built, the memories I had kept safe, the tokens of love my husband had given me. I stumbled into my bedroom, searching. My hands shook as I opened drawers, checked boxes, lifted lids. The engagement ring my husband slipped onto my finger decades ago. Gone. The brooch my father gave my mother, which she passed down to me, gone. I sank onto the bed, the air leaving my lungs. I felt stripped bare, not just of objects, but of the very threads that tethered me to my past. Later that evening, I found out where the money went. Her son had been bragging to a neighbor about their new vacation plans. He said, "Mom said Grandma gave us the money for it." My ears burned when I heard it. My money, my belongings, my trust, funding their luxuries. It wasn't about helping me. It was never about making my life easier. It was about taking. And suddenly, all the little warnings I had ignored, the phone calls in hushed tones, the missing rings, the new clothes she wore, clicked into place. I confronted her that night. "You've taken what doesn't belong to you," I said, my voice low but firm. "Those things were mine. They meant something." She crossed her arms, her face hard. "You don't need them. You don't even remember half of what you own. I'm just making smart choices for both of us." Both of us. As though her vacations, her shopping sprees, her comfort were somehow mine too. When I pressed further, she raised her voice. "Stop acting like a child, Mom. You should be grateful I'm taking care of things." Her words cut deeper than the loss of any object. She had reframed me, in her mind, as someone helpless, someone who should sit quietly while her life was dismantled around her. That night, I sat alone in the dim light of my bedroom, the emptiness of the shelves staring back at me. I picked up the locket she hadn't managed to sell yet, clutching it tightly in my palm. I whispered to myself, "This isn't care. This is theft." And with that whisper, something shifted inside me. Grief had kept me silent. Loneliness had kept me compliant. But anger began to wake me up. For the first time since my husband's passing, I felt the spark of a fight rise in me. I didn't know what form it would take yet or how I would summon the strength. But I knew one thing with piercing clarity. I could no longer let her strip me of everything. There's only so much a heart can bear before it cracks. Mine had carried grief, disappointment, and silence. But when I saw my daughter's eyes, cold, dismissive, almost daring me to resist, I felt the crack split wide open. I waited a day before speaking. I told myself to calm down, to think carefully, but calmness never came. Instead, I replayed every moment in my mind, the way she dismissed my treasures as junk, the way her voice rose as if she were the mother and I the child, the audacity to spend what I had built with my husband's sweat and my own. By the next evening, I couldn't stay silent any longer. We were sitting at the dinner table, Anna, her husband, their 2 children, and me. Roast chicken sat steaming between us. The kids laughed, blissfully unaware as I stared across the table at my daughter. "Anna," I began, my voice steady but cold, "we need to talk about what you've taken from me." Her fork froze halfway to her mouth. Her husband glanced at her, then back at his plate. The children went quiet. "What do you mean, Mom?" she asked, her tone falsely light. "You know what I mean. The books, the jewelry, the savings, my things, sold, my accounts, emptied. You've taken more than I ever gave you permission to take." The room grew heavy. Finally, she set her fork down, folded her arms, and leaned back. "You're being dramatic. I've explained this. I sold what you didn't need. I managed your money. I'm making sure you're cared for." "That's not care," I said sharply. "That's theft." Her cheeks flushed. "How dare you call me a thief? After everything I've done for you, after all the time I've given up to keep this house running for you." "You didn't give up anything," I shot back. "You took, and you lied." Her husband finally spoke, his voice low, careful. "Let's not raise our voices. Maybe we should—" But Anna cut him off. "No, she needs to hear this. Mom, you can't even keep track of your own bills anymore. You forget things, you lose things. You'd be lost without me. You should be thankful." The words landed like blows. Not because they were true, I knew they weren't, but because they revealed how she saw me. Weak, incompetent, disposable. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. "I may be old, but I am not helpless, and I will not sit here while you strip me of everything I've worked for." The children stared, wide-eyed, forks frozen in their hands. Her husband muttered, "Anna, maybe we should talk privately." But she leaned forward, her voice rising, sharp with anger. "You think you're still in control? You think you can handle everything on your own? You can't even log into your own bank account. I've had to do everything because you're too stubborn to admit you need me." "I needed love, not control," I said, my throat thick but my voice firm. "I needed care, not betrayal." Her face twisted, a mixture of fury and something like fear. But she didn't back down. The dinner ended in silence, the chicken untouched. I retreated to my room, shaking, my chest tight. I sat on the edge of my bed, tears slipping down my cheeks, but beneath them was something stronger than sorrow, rage. For months, maybe years, I had let grief and loneliness make me small. I had let her decide what I needed, what I owned, who I was, no more. The next morning, I rose before the sun. I made myself tea, sat at the table, and began writing. I wrote a list of what I had lost, not just the objects, the rings, the books, the quilts, but the independence, the trust, the dignity. Seeing it all on paper made it real, made it undeniable. Then I wrote something else, a vow. I will take back control of my life, no matter what it costs me. That vow was the beginning of the end, of her control, of my silence, of the lie that I was helpless. I didn't know then how hard the road would be. I didn't know what storms I would stir by standing up. But as I folded that piece of paper and tucked it into my locket, I knew one thing. My daughter might have taken my things, but she hadn't taken me. Not yet. And I would not let her. I once believed strength faded with age, that life whittled you down until you had nothing left but resignation. But in the quiet after that dinner, I learned something different. When your dignity is stolen, anger can forge a strength you didn't know you still had. The morning after, I dressed in my best coat, pinned on the locket I refused to let Anna touch, and walked to the bus stop. My legs ached, my chest tightened in the autumn chill, but I kept moving. For the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't walking toward her. I was walking for me, the destination, the bank. The teller looked at me with polite confusion when I asked for my account balance. She tapped her keyboard, frowned, tapped again. "Mrs. Harding," she said gently, "most of your funds were transferred last month. The account is nearly empty." My knees buckled, but I straightened them. Transferred where? She hesitated, then lowered her voice. To a joint account in your daughter's name. There it was, the confirmation I dreaded but needed. My trust turned into her signature. I left the bank in a daze, but also with a spark of resolve. I stopped at a small law office 2 streets down. I had walked past it for years, never with a reason to enter. That day, I pushed the door open. Inside, the air smelled faintly of old paper and coffee. A young receptionist looked up. "Can I help you?" "I need to speak with someone about my will," I said. My voice shook, but my words were steady. Minutes later, I sat across from a lawyer named Mr. Donnelly. He had kind eyes and listened without interrupting as I spilled the story. The accounts, the jewelry, the books, the control. When I finished, he leaned forward. "Mrs. Harding, you're not the first parent to face this. It's painful, but you're not powerless. You still have rights. We can update your will today, revoke her access to your accounts, and make sure your estate is protected." I felt both relief and sorrow. Relief that there was a way forward. Sorrow that it had come to this, that I had to guard myself against my own child. That afternoon, with shaking hands, I signed the papers. I cut Anna from my will. I closed the joint accounts. I appointed Mr. Donnelly as executor to ensure my wishes would be honored. Each signature was a wound, but also a stitch. Painful, yet healing. Later, back at home, I sat by the window watching the street outside. For the first time, I allowed myself to cry, not as a victim, but as a woman reclaiming her life. That's when I heard a knock at the door. It was my neighbor, Ruth. She was a widow, too, a woman of quiet resilience who had lived next door for 30 years. She carried a pie in her hands. "I haven't seen you out much," she said softly. "Thought you could use some company." I hesitated, then let her in. Over tea, the truth spilled out of me. The betrayal, the missing belongings, the confrontation. Her eyes widened, but she didn't judge. She reached across the table and took my hand. "Frances," she said, "you're stronger than you think. Don't let her write your story for you." Her words settled deep inside me. For months, I had felt alone, tethered only to the daughter who betrayed me. But now I realized there were others, friends, neighbors, even strangers, who would stand beside me if I dared to stand up for myself. The next days were a whirlwind of action. I opened new accounts in my own name. I locked my jewelry in a safety deposit box. I went room by room, making an inventory of what remained. For each item, I asked myself, does this stay with me, or do I move it to safety? It was exhausting work, but also liberating. Each decision returned a sliver of the woman I used to be. Anna noticed, of course. She came storming in one afternoon demanding, "Why are you shutting me out after everything I've done for you?" I looked her in the eye and said words I never thought I could say. "Because you stopped being my caretaker the moment you became my thief." Her face turned red, her voice sharp, but I didn't flinch. For once, I wasn't the one shrinking. That night, I sat with Ruth on the porch, the evening air cool against our skin. She poured us each a small glass of wine, and we watched the sun sink behind the trees. "I feel like I've been asleep for years," I admitted, "like I let myself fade away." Ruth smiled gently. "Then consider this your awakening." I breathed deeply, letting the quiet settle around me. For the first time since my husband's death, the silence didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like space I could fill with my own choices, my own strength. Yes, I had lost my daughter's trust, perhaps forever, but in its place I had found something else, something I thought was gone. Myself. When you stop playing the part someone has written for you, they don't thank you. They rage. They claw to keep control. That's exactly what Anna did when she realized she could no longer reach into my pockets and call it love. And it began with the letter. Mr. Donnelly sent it, formal, crisp, unyielding. A notice that Anna was no longer executor of my estate, that her access to my accounts had been revoked, that her name was cut from every future plan. I imagined her reading it, the paper trembling in her hands, the color rising in her cheeks. I didn't have to imagine for long. 2 days later, she showed up at my door. She didn't knock politely. She banged. "Mom!" Her voice was sharp enough to slice through wood. "Open this door right now!" I stood in the hallway, hands clenched at my sides, heart hammering. But I didn't hesitate. I opened the door. She stormed in, waving the letter like a weapon. "What is this? What the hell is this supposed to mean?" "It means," I said calmly, "that you no longer control my life." Her eyes flashed. "You've been talking to someone. Who put this idea in your head? That lawyer? That nosy neighbor?" "No one put the idea there," I answered. "It was mine. It should have been mine all along." Her husband trailed in behind her, looking weary, his eyes darting between us. "Anna, maybe we should—" "Stay out of this," she snapped. Then she turned back to me, voice rising. "Do you know how ungrateful you sound? After everything I've done for you, after all the hours I've spent managing your mess." "My mess," I said, my voice tightening. "My life, my things, my savings. None of it was yours to touch. You didn't manage it. You stole it." Her mouth twisted. "I was protecting you. You don't know what you're doing anymore. You'd be lost without me." "Then I'd rather be lost on my own," I said, "than found in your cage." For a moment, silence. Her husband cleared his throat, almost pleading, "Anna." But she wasn't listening. She leaned in close, her face inches from mine, her voice low and venomous. "You'll regret this, Mom. When you're alone, when you can't manage, don't come crawling back. Don't expect me to lift a finger." The words stung, but they also freed me. I stepped back, lifted my chin, and said, "You already left me long ago, the day you chose greed over love." She stormed out, her husband trailing helplessly behind. The door slammed so hard the windows rattled. The silence afterward was almost holy. I stood there trembling, breath shallow, but upright and unbroken. In the days that followed, the phone rang endlessly, first her number, then her husband's. When I didn't answer, the messages grew uglier. "You're tearing this family apart. You don't know what you're doing. You'll die alone if you keep this up." I deleted each one. At night, I sat by my window, looking out at the street. For years, I had lived in fear of loneliness. Now I realized loneliness wasn't the enemy. The enemy was losing myself while surrounded by people who claimed it was for my own good. There was one final visit. She came again, this time calmer, rehearsed. She sat across from me, her voice soft, almost tender. "Mom, we can fix this. Put my name back on the accounts. Let's pretend this never happened. We're family." I studied her face, searching for the daughter I once knew, but all I saw was calculation, the glint of someone who believed she could bend me again. I shook my head slowly. Family doesn't strip you bare and call it care. Family doesn't sell your memories and call it clutter. I won't go back. For a flicker of a moment, I thought I saw pain in her eyes. Then it vanished, replaced by coldness. She rose without another word and left. That was the last time she crossed my threshold. The house was quieter afterward, yes, but it was my quiet. The accounts were mine. The choices were mine. I had lost a daughter in the process. That truth cut deep, deeper than I could show Ruth or Mr. Donnelly, or even myself at times. But I had regained something I thought was gone forever, my right to my own life. When I closed the last joint account, signing my name with a steady hand, I felt something unexpected. Peace. I whispered to myself, "It's over." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. There's an emptiness in losing a child not to death, but to betrayal. You grieve someone who is still alive, someone who walks the same earth, but no longer walks with you. That grief doesn't vanish. It lingers like a shadow. But with time, you learn to live with it. You even learn to walk taller beneath it. In the weeks after Anna's final visit, the house grew still. No footsteps echoing down the hallway, no clatter of drawers being opened without my consent, no voice telling me what I did or didn't need. At first, the quiet was heavy. I found myself reaching for the phone, almost dialing her number out of habit, only to stop mid-motion. The ache of wanting the daughter I once had was real, but I knew calling her would only bring the other one, the one who saw me as an obstacle, a vault to raid. So I filled the quiet in other ways. I began walking each morning, longer distances than before. The rhythm of my steps gave me strength. The cool air cleared my mind. I started reading again, sitting by the window with novels I hadn't touched in years. And Ruth, dear Ruth, came by often, sometimes with pie, sometimes with nothing more than her presence. We'd sip tea, watch the street, and share silences that didn't feel empty. One afternoon she asked, "Do you ever regret it? Cutting her off completely?" I thought about it for a long while before answering. I regret that it had to come to this, that I had a daughter who made me choose between keeping her or keeping myself, but the choice itself, no, I don't regret that. Ruth nodded, her eyes kind. Then you chose right. The truth is, I did lose something precious, not just possessions, not just savings, but a bond that should have been unbreakable. There are nights when that loss creeps in, when I lie awake wondering if I could have done something differently, said something differently. But then I remember. I gave her every chance. I trusted her, believed her, forgave her. And still she took. Still, she sold my life piece by piece. The betrayal wasn't mine to carry. It was hers to commit. Over time, the pain sharpened into something else, resolve. I began sharing my story at the local community center. Other seniors listened, nodding, some with tears in their eyes. Afterward, they would come to me, whispering, "My son did something similar," or "My niece emptied my account." I realized I wasn't alone. This wound was not only mine, and in telling it, I could give others the courage to guard themselves, to speak up before it was too late. One evening, standing before a small circle of listeners, I ended with these words: "Do not mistake control for care. Do not surrender your independence for the illusion of love. Protect yourself even from those who claim they're protecting you, because if you lose yourself, there may be no one left to fight for you." The applause was gentle, but the looks in their eyes told me the message had landed. These days, I live quietly but with peace. My will is secure. My accounts are mine. My memories, those that remain, are guarded carefully. And though I walk alone, I walk with dignity. I tend to my husband's garden again, kneeling in the soil, feeling the sun warm my back. I wear my locket often, a small reminder that love, real love, is not possession or control. It is freedom and trust. Sometimes I wonder if Anna thinks of me, if she regrets what she did, or if she tells herself I was the one who betrayed her. I may never know, but I do know this. I will never again hand over the keys to my life. Not to her, not to anyone. Because in losing so much, I found the one thing that matters most: myself. I may have lost my daughter, but I found my voice. I found my strength. I found my peace. And that's something no one can take away.